Hey, what's up, everyone? So it's the end of the year, 2025 is coming to a close. And because this is a newer channel, I don't have a slew of videos to bind together into a year in review. But what I can do, and what I thought might be fun, is to do another writing episode where I just talk about good old storytelling, the old fashioned way, with a book. This is Story Art Online, and we try and analyze what makes a good story. It's a simple question, but a difficult one to execute on. I definitely did my best with what I was working with when I put out my trilogy. There are some key mistakes that I made, though, and I'm going to be walking through those. The biggest one is by far the Ganondorf below Hyrule Castle. It is the great calamity, and I'm going to save that one for last. So the first initial mistake that I made was not hiring a good cover artist. If you're a self-published author, it is imperative that you hire a good cover artist because your cover is going to be, at its base, your most basic, foremost form of marketing. I personally have been scrolling my Kindle and have bought books that I later found out were self-published simply based on the cover. So if your name isn't one that's widely recognized, mine sure isn't, then definitely invest in a good cover artist. It's worth the money. Also, you get a really cool looking book on your shelf, so who wouldn't want that? Here is what my cover artist came up with, and I will be sure to link his Instagram in case you wanted to check out his work. Now, that is a key mistake that I made. Initially, I tried making my own covers because I was just trying to save money. Like, I did not have a lot of money. It was rough. We had a newborn at home. We were barely scraping by, and I was like, I cannot spend $300, $500 on a cover. So I made my own. I took an Illustrator, just some online classes, and they were a lot cheaper, and I was able to kind of put together what was a decent enough cover for the initial run. Now, again, if I could go back, I would have just started with a good cover. That I think is very, very important. Something else that I think is really huge that not a lot of people pay attention to is the effort in marketing. So absolutely expect to have to do a million things that you don't want to do just to get your book out there. I work in marketing. I should have known this. I just guess I was hoping that my books would take off like Philip C. Quaintrell. I've heard him on podcasts say that he basically put his books out there and it was a rocket ship. They just kind of took off. And that doesn't happen for 99.9% of us. So before even writing a book, be thinking about what route you want to take. Do you want to go the traditional route, or do you want to go the indie author route where you are self-publishing? If it's the latter, definitely be thinking through marketing initiatives, what you can be doing, what types of platforms you like. Like for me, I really like YouTube. I found out pretty quickly that I did not like Instagram. And since I've started up my YouTube channel only a few weeks ago, I've really enjoyed this as a medium for communication and just to kind of get my thoughts out there. I'm definitely not the type of guy who's posting just these clever, artful reels. It's just not really who I am. And I don't like putting my life out there all that much either. So YouTube's where it's at for me. And it might be different for you. I have some friends who are in my writers group, and they thrive on Instagram and on the reels and TikTok, and for the young kids these days, though, probably TikTok's been replaced by a different platform by this point. It just keeps evolving. So that's something else that I would definitely keep tucked in the back of your mind, is that the marketing is almost as important as the actual book itself. I've personally stumbled across reels that I thought were fantastic, and the pitch, the idea, everything about it was great. But then I've read the book itself, and not gonna lie, I thought it was like kind of mediocre, a little bit subpar. And so, but it is about being able to put your best foot forward and actually getting people to open up the book and read it. Shooting it to you straight here. There's a lot of marketing involved. Be sure to be putting yourself out there on social media. You don't need to pay for advertising necessarily. In fact, I've not seen really any good data on authors running ads. The ROAS, return on your ad spend, on that is going to be extremely difficult to be positive because the margin is so slim. So like on a $15 book, right? I'll just use some numbers out here. So let's take this hypothetical scenario where we've spent $100 on ads. We're charging $15 per book. And so we have sold 10 books and made $150. Now, using a simple ROAS formula, revenue divided by cost, that might seem great. 150% or 1.5x per book sold. That's great. However, you do need to deduct expenses, and this is where it can get really tricky in the advertising landscape. But think about the cost of goods sold of the actual printing of the books and the materials, and then also the fees that KDP will charge you. And so when you factor those in, and let's just say $5 each per book, so we're deducting essentially $100 off of the revenue that we made, and we're really only profiting $50. That's where it starts to break down a little bit, because why would you spend $100 and only make $50 in profit? You're losing money at that point. So these are things to be thinking about. Where it might make sense though is if you're trying to just bank on people leaving reviews. A good rule of thumb is that 10% of the people who purchase your book will leave a review. So if you have 50 I said 10 purchases, then expect maybe one of them to leave a review. So you could, if you've got the moolah behind it, you could be trying this out. And again, that's where you've got to have a good cover. For advertising, I always say that people place product. It's got to be the right person and the right placement and then the right product. If you match those three things up, you'll have yourself a winning strategy. However, it's extremely difficult to do. I personally would not run ads for my book. And this is coming from a digital advertiser. I do this as my 9 to 5. So the next piece of advice I would give to anyone looking to self-publish is to have a writer's group. Like, it is a lonely, brutal slog, my friend, and you will find yourself slipping and falling down that mountain. It's a tough one to climb. It really is. Getting a book finished is a massive, massive endeavor. Publishing too, but just finishing a story is incredibly difficult. And I don't know what the attrition rate is, but the amount of people who sit down and execute on an idea is very, very low. The amount that are able to get to the end and be done with it, it's very, very low. So just by finishing your book, you have done something incredible, but getting to that finish line is incredibly difficult. And so that's where I would recommend joining a writer's group. For me, I have the Writers Guild. It's awesome. And it's just a few friends who are in a similar boat. We're all trying to write our stories and to get it out to the world. And we have this dream for some of us, fading for some of us. It's sparking with new life. It just depends on where you're at in the journey. But I think that no matter where you are, having people to commiserate with, having people whose experience to draw from, having encouragement from good humans who want to see you succeed is vitally important. So be sure to find yourself a solid writers group. So what I would say my last piece of advice is to make sure the story is worth it. Think about this from a logical, practical perspective. And this is something I don't hear from a lot of authors. And there's kind of this reigning narrative that is follow your passion, pursue your dreams. Well, sure, unless they suck, right? And it's the same with stories. Not all stories are worth writing. I know for me, I started writing my trilogy when I was in middle school. And then I kind of took a break, didn't really touch it for 10 years, and then thought, you know what? In my mid-20s, I was like, hey, I would love to button this up, finish it, pay homage to the Case into the Past and like the authors I used to love, just to like, I don't know, leave my mark, right? Or to finish that journey. And I have no regrets, and I'm really proud of where I was able to get my books. But I can tell you, it was very, very difficult. There were aspects of the plot that were things that I would not do currently and were extremely difficult to kind of work around or to make sense with. And it was just a massive, massive pain. And you can avoid a lot of heartache let me rephrase this. You can avoid a lot of headache if you're willing to take on the heartache. So if you're willing to let go or to have that book on your shelf, metaphorically, just in your heart, then you'll be the wiser for it. We have limited time. Writing a book takes a lot of time. Writing 3 books, getting caught up in a trilogy it was years and years of my life. And the payoff for me was worth it just because I got closure through that. I think I learned a lot. But for most people, it depends, right? And you want to be super careful if you're dedicating 5-6 years of your life to something that may not go anywhere. And if book 1 doesn't have excellent sales, don't put out book 2 thinking, oh yeah, that'll boost book 1's sales. It doesn't necessarily work that way. A lot of times trilogies are funnels, and you've got the diehard fans who make it to the 3rd one, or the faithful who are just like, hey, I want to know what happens. And then you do have a lot of fall off from other readers who maybe just didn't resonate with. So be very deliberate with what type of story you're putting out there and stress test it a little bit. No one's going to be as excited about your story as you are. If someone's eyes light up, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good idea. If their eyes are blank, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea. Be deliberate. Just make sure that the story you're committing yourself to is one that you're willing to spend months, years, hours and hours and hours, and maybe see no payoff with. Maybe you lose money because you're sinking it into cover artists and into editors and into proofreaders and into beta readers. And the list goes on and on and on. You can sink a lot of money into a book and not see a dime from it. Not all great books take off. It's just a sad reality. So those would be my writing tips. It's been one heck of a year, and I've personally just had a couple stories that I'm really, really excited about. I've been trying to hone in on my craft, and I hope that you're doing the same. And wherever you are in your writer's journey, whether you've started it or not, I just wish you the best, my friend. In 2026, make it a good year.